She hadn't meant to say it out loud. The words escaped before she could stop them, a slip of honesty too raw for a first meeting. I can't afford coffee. Her cheeks flushed hot as soon as the confession slipped from her lips. She looked down, pretending to study the cracks in the tiled floor, wishing she could melt into them. This was supposed to be simple, a blind date set up by her well-meaning friend. A cup of coffee, a little small talk, nothing more. She hadn't expected the menu to feel like a wall she couldn't climb. The man across from her didn't move at first. He was taller than most, broad-shouldered beneath a tailored jacket, with a presence that seemed to fill the room without effort. Everything about him screamed success. The polished shoes, the silver watch, even the way the barista glanced at him with faint recognition. She braced herself for judgment, for the polite smile people gave when they decided you weren't worth the effort. But instead, he simply tilted his head, lips curving into a smile that was warm, not mocking. "Then it's a good thing I can," he said easily. Without waiting for her protest, he stepped to the counter and ordered, his voice calm, confident. "2 cappuccinos, please." Her stomach twisted. "You really didn't have to." "I wanted to," he interrupted gently. He handed her the cup as though it were the most natural thing in the world, his smile disarming. "Besides, I never drink coffee alone." They found a small table by the window. Sunlight spilled through the glass, catching in the foam of their drinks. She wrapped her fingers around the cup, letting the warmth seep into her palms. It wasn't just coffee anymore. It was kindness, unexpected and undeserved, and it made her throat ache. "So," he began, leaning back slightly, studying her with eyes that missed little, "was that honesty, or a test?" She blinked. "What do you mean?" "Most people sit down with me and pretend," he explained, voice low but steady. "Pretend they've got it all together. Pretend their lives are perfect. You didn't." A humorless laugh escaped her. "I don't really have the luxury of pretending." She hesitated, then sighed. "I work 2 jobs. Some months I make rent. Some months, I don't. Coffee shops aren't exactly in the budget." She stirred her drink with the little wooden stick, embarrassed by how easily the truth poured out. "Not the best first date impression, I guess." He didn't flinch. If anything, his expression softened. "You're braver than you think. Most people would rather lie." She met his gaze, surprised by the sincerity there. "And what about you?" she asked cautiously. "What do you pretend about?" His smile faltered for the first time, though not in a way that unsettled her. "That I'm managing just fine." He paused, fingers tracing the rim of his cup. "I'm a single dad. My daughter's 6. Brilliant, stubborn, keeps me on my toes. I run a company during the day and read bedtime stories at night. Some days I feel like I'm doing both badly. But I smile, and people believe I've got it under control." She hadn't expected that. A CEO, yes, his posture and presence made that clear, but a single father. A man who admitted to struggling. It chipped away at the invisible wall between them. For a while, they simply talked. About late shifts and early mornings, about scraped knees and overdue bills, about the tiny victories that kept them moving forward. She laughed at his stories of his daughter's dramatic tantrums, and he listened intently when she confessed her dream of finishing school one day. By the time their cups were empty, she realized something had shifted. She'd come in carrying the weight of what she couldn't afford. She left with the fragile hope that maybe, just maybe, some things, kindness, honesty, connection, were free. The cafe had begun to fill with the late afternoon crowd. Students huddled over laptops, office workers grabbed takeout cups on their way home, and the low hum of conversation wrapped around them like background music. Yet, at their little table by the window, it felt as if the noise couldn't touch them. She traced the rim of her empty coffee cup, hesitant. The warmth from the drink had faded, but the warmth of his kindness lingered. "So, you're a CEO," she said finally, testing the word like it didn't quite belong in her mouth. He gave a short laugh, as though the title meant less than people thought. "That's what the papers say. But most days I feel more like a firefighter, putting out problems before they burn the place down." She smiled faintly. "Sounds exhausting." "It is," he admitted. His gaze softened as he leaned forward. "But not in the same way as raising a daughter. That's chaos wrapped in ribbons. She insists on choosing her own clothes every morning, and let's just say the boardroom doesn't prepare you for negotiating with a 6-year-old in unicorn pajamas." The girl laughed, covering her mouth quickly, but he caught the sparkle in her eyes. He liked that. It wasn't forced. She wasn't trying to charm him. She was just herself. "And you?" he asked gently. "What's your chaos?" Her shoulders lifted in a small shrug. "Rent, bills." Standing in the grocery store, calculator in hand, trying to make everything stretch. "It's not ribbons and unicorns, but it's mine." She hesitated, then added in a quieter tone, "Sometimes it feels like no matter how hard I work, I'm always a step behind." He studied her for a moment, silent. His world was polished boardrooms and glossy suits, yet he didn't look at her with pity. Instead, there was something like respect. "You're still standing," he said simply. Her eyes flicked up, caught by the conviction in his tone. "What do you mean? Plenty of people fold when life pushes that hard. But you," he gestured toward her with an open hand. "You're honest about where you are. You're working, fighting. That matters." For a moment, she couldn't speak. No one had ever said that to her before. She'd only ever been told she wasn't enough, that she needed to do more, earn more, be more. His words felt like an anchor in a storm she hadn't realized she was drowning in. The silence between them stretched, comfortable now, filled with the sound of clinking cups and laughter from the counter. Finally, she found her voice. "Why did you agree to a blind date?" A grin tugged at his lips. "Because my daughter made me." Her brows lifted. "She set this up." "Not directly," he chuckled. "She told me one morning, with her hair sticking out in every direction, that I needed to find a nice lady who smiles at you the way I smile at pancakes." The girl burst into laughter, the sound spilling into the cafe like sunlight. She pressed a hand to her mouth, trying to muffle it, but he only smiled wider. "And you think I'm that lady?" she teased when she finally caught her breath. "I think," he said, eyes steady on hers, "you're someone I'd like to know better." Her chest tightened, a mix of fear and something she hadn't felt in a long time, hope. She looked down at her empty cup, then back at him, and for the first time in months, she didn't feel the weight of what she couldn't afford. Instead, she felt the possibility of something she couldn't put a price on. The cafe door swung open as they stepped out into the fading light of early evening. The city hummed around them, cars streaming by, street vendors closing shop, the golden glow of storefronts spilling across the sidewalk. The air was cooler now, and she tugged her worn cardigan tighter around her shoulders. He noticed, and without a word, slipped off his jacket and held it out. Her eyes widened. "I can't take that. You'll be cold." "I'm fine," he said with a quiet certainty. "Besides, it looks better on you." She hesitated, but the chill nipping at her skin made the decision for her. Sliding into the jacket, she was enveloped not only in warmth, but in the faint scent of his cologne, clean, steady, familiar, like cedar and something darker she couldn't name. It was oddly comforting. They walked side by side, their pace unhurried. For once, she wasn't rushing from one job to the other, counting coins for bus fare, or worrying about overdue bills. For once, she allowed herself to simply exist. "So," she said, glancing at him, "what does a CEO do after a blind date?" "Hop in a black car, take a call, fly off to another city." He chuckled, shaking his head. "I'm afraid you're giving me too much credit. What I actually do after a blind date is pick up my daughter from her grandmother's house, convince her to brush her teeth, and read the same bedtime story for the 10th time." The image made her smile. "Which story?" "Right now, it's The Princess and the Dragon. She insists on me doing all the voices. My neighbors probably think I'm crazy." Her laughter bubbled up, genuine and warm. It surprised her how natural it felt, how natural he felt, despite the world that separated them. As they crossed the street, he slowed, then stopped near a small park. The playground was nearly empty, only a few children lingering on the swings as their parents called them home. He leaned against the railing, watching quietly. "Sometimes I wonder," he admitted, voice softer now, "if I'm giving her enough. Not money, that part's easy. But time, attention, the kind of love that doesn't come with a price tag." The confession caught her off guard. A man like him, doubting himself. But she saw it in his eyes, the weight of responsibility, the quiet fear that he wasn't enough for the little girl who meant everything to him. "You're here," she said firmly. "You show up for her. That's more than most kids get." He turned to her, searching her face, and for a moment, there was no city, no noise, no difference in their worlds. Just two people carrying burdens, seeing each other clearly. Her heart stuttered under his gaze. She had told herself she wouldn't get too close, that this was just coffee, just an evening. But something about him disarmed her. The way he smiled at her honesty, the way he admitted his own doubts. It made her want to trust again. "I should go," she said finally, breaking the moment before it unraveled her completely. He nodded, though something flickered across his expression, disappointment, maybe, or hesitation. "Can I walk you home?" She almost refused, out of habit, but the offer wasn't laced with pity. It was simple, respectful. She found herself nodding. They walked in silence, the kind that wasn't heavy but thoughtful. When they reached her street, she paused, clutching the lapels of his jacket. "Thank you," she said softly. "For the coffee," he teased. "For not making me feel small." His smile was quiet, steady. "You were never small." For the first time in a long time, she believed it. The week passed faster than she expected. Between long shifts at the store and evenings spent tutoring, she didn't have much time to think. Yet every quiet moment, waiting for the bus, folding laundry, brushing her hair before bed, his words echoed in her mind. "You were never small." So when her phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number, "It's Daniel. Would you let me buy you coffee again? My daughter insists I say please." Her lips curved before she even realized it. They agreed to meet on Saturday afternoon. Not at the cafe this time, but at a small park near the river. She arrived early, nerves dancing in her stomach. The thought of meeting his daughter felt heavier than any blind date could have been. Children didn't hide their judgments, and she didn't know if she could handle being dismissed by the most important person in his life. The sound of laughter drew her gaze. Daniel approached, holding the hand of a little girl with bouncing curls and wide, curious eyes. The child wore a purple dress sprinkled with stars and clutched a stuffed dragon against her chest. "This is Emma," Daniel introduced warmly. "Emma, this is the nice lady I told you about." Emma looked her up and down with surprising seriousness, then tilted her head. "Do you like pancakes?" The question startled her into a laugh. "I love pancakes." Emma broke into a grin, satisfied. "Good. Daddy only smiles like that when I make pancakes. So you can stay." Daniel groaned, covering his face with his hand, but his daughter's words only made the girl's heart soften. They sat together on a bench while Emma skipped toward the playground, dragon in tow. "You told her about me?" she asked quietly. He shrugged, a little sheepish. "She notices everything, and she doesn't let me get away with much. I figured honesty was easier." She smiled, watching Emma climb onto the swing. "She's wonderful. She's my whole world," he admitted. Then, after a pause, "But I'd like to make room for more." His eyes lingered on her, steady, unflinching. The weight of his words sank into her, heavy and fragile all at once. She wasn't used to being chosen, to being seen as anything more than temporary or inconvenient. Part of her wanted to run before hope could root too deeply. But another part, the part that had laughed with him, shared truths with him, felt warmth in his jacket, whispered that maybe this was different. Emma bounded back to the bench, dragging her dragon. "Your turn to push me," she declared, tugging at her hand. The girl blinked. "Me? Yes, you," Emma said with authority. "Daddy pushes too hard. You look careful." Daniel raised his brows as though to say, "See what I mean." She chuckled nervously but followed Emma to the swing. The little girl plopped onto the seat and kicked her feet. Higher, but not too high. With each gentle push, Emma squealed with delight. The girl couldn't help laughing along, the sound carrying across the park. For the first time in years, she felt weightless, as if the world's heaviness had slipped away, if only for a moment. When Emma finally tumbled off the swing, flushed and breathless, she wrapped her tiny arms around the girl's waist in a sudden hug. "You can stay forever," she announced. The girl froze, startled by the child's innocent declaration. Her eyes met Daniel's across the playground. His expression was unreadable. Hope mingled with vulnerability, but he didn't look away. She swallowed hard, her heart thudding. For once, the future didn't feel like an impossible mountain to climb. It felt like a door, cracked open, waiting for her to step through.